Community leaders in the UK say British students are travelling to Somalia to fight with a terrorist group linked to Al-Qaeda. It follows the case of Umar Farouk Abdul Muttalab, the London engineering graduate, accused of trying to blow up a transatlantic flight on Christmas Day. Well, joining me now is Mohammed Abdullahi, Director of the UK Somali Community Initiative. Now, those of us reading the papers, you know, Somalia, Yemen and the links to terrorism in the UK, it's something that's only really surfaced in the last few months and weeks. Is it something that you and the community have been aware of and watching out for a longer period of time?
As you know, as a community leader, what we always try to do is try to understand the problem, how big it is, especially in the UK, and now the problem that we have with the youngsters going to Somalia or to Yemen. And even not only us, but we think that other communities like Pakistani or Bangladeshi who's facing this same problem, how can we sit down and understand how to tackle it?
So you're trying to understand how big the problem is. How big would you say it is? How many people, for example, are you aware of or have you heard of who've travelled to Somalia and undergone and have had links with Al-Qaeda?
We had a story which is 5 people and 5 to nearly 6 people, but it's not something that we know for sure. And unless we find out if this story is true or not, we cannot say that we know for sure that this is the people who went to Somalia. As you know, there is many Somali British people going to Somalia for different purposes. So there is people who are going to join Al-Shabaab, and there is others who are just going to visit their parents. So we have to be very careful to understand who is who and what they're going to Somalia to do. We need to come out and talk about this issue, to be open about this issue, because we think now it is a time that we need to talk about and we need to come together to raise this issue. And sometimes, to be fair, we have to talk about the positive of the Somali community and the negative. And the positive is you have a Somali student who are now in a TFG from the government, Somali government, who are doing a positive work in Somalia, and they're doing a positive work in the UK. So we have to balance between who are going to Somalia for a good thing, who are going to Somalia and maybe destroying lives. So we have to be very careful and be helpful to even the families, especially the mothers who are missing their kids, to work with them.
Do you have any idea how they are recruiting the youngsters in the UK? You've talked about 5 people possibly that you may have been aware of. How are they getting in touch with those people? How are they recruiting them to go to Somalia?
We don't know for sure, but we only had the stories. That some people were recruited from the mosque, some people were recruited from maybe a friend to a friend. So there's different cases from the street to a mosque, to maybe sometime to houses. So the cases are big, and now what we're trying to understand is we don't know for sure, but we have to find out more. And I think the reason that we are doing this work as hard as we can is to show, especially the UK community, that the Somali leaders or Somali community are trying their best to understand the problem and to do something about it collectively.
Mohammed Abdullahi, thanks very much for joining us this afternoon to talk about that. Well, the revelations about the new wave of British recruits to Al-Qaeda comes as it's today reported that terror groups are planning to use female suicide bombers to carry out attacks on Western targets. Joining us now is Colonel Richard Kemp, who's the former head of international terrorism team for the Joint Intelligence Committee. And Richard Kemp, this idea of Al-Qaeda training women of non-Arabic appearance to work as suicide bombers, do you think this is a credible idea?
It is. Al-Qaeda is a very resourceful organisation who are desperate to find ways around all of our security measures, including the profiling that we do to help protect ourselves. And they have long been on the lookout and sometimes succeeded in recruiting people of Western appearance to reduce the level of suspicion against them, and also women. And women suicide bombers are not uncommon, and child suicide bombers indeed are not uncommon in some parts of the world. They've been used extensively in Iraq, in Gaza, in Afghanistan to an extent. And so I think this is not really a surprise. It's obviously very worrying, but it's not a surprise to us.
Now, a lot of the information that we're getting appears to be coming from Farouk Abdul Muttalab, the Christmas Day attempted plane bomber. How important is it to the authorities that he was captured and captured alive? What's the quality of information, as far as you're aware, that's coming from him?
It is very important that happens, and whenever we capture or arrest people who are involved in terrorism and are able to question and gain information from them personally, or sometimes even more importantly from their computers and other equipment they may have and documents they may have, it can give us huge advantages. Sometimes direct operational advantages which lead maybe to further arrest and prevention of attack, or indeed just to insight into the way they're doing business. The other side of the coin, of course, is that each time that we try accused terrorists and they go through the trial process and we have to disclose information about what we know about them, that also helps their side, and they're just as good at learning from these processes as we are.
Now also today we've had this tape that's been released allegedly from Osama bin Laden saying that Al-Qaeda were behind that Christmas Day attempted attack. Is there anything else significant that you think that we can glean from what's on that tape?
I think there are two things we should be thinking about from that tape, and the first one is that bin Laden has said that he sort of focused quite heavily there on the Israel-Palestine conflict, and he does that frequently. He doesn't actually care about the Palestinians except in as far as he can exploit them. But what he does know is that the Palestinian issue is something that attracts huge sympathy and support, not just in the Middle East, but also across the Western world. And Al-Qaeda is in a state now that I certainly wouldn't write them off in any way, but they have lost a lot of support among some of their core followers who give them money and practical assistance because of the number of Muslims that have been killed in their attacks, which have far exceeded the non-Muslims that have been killed. So, excuse me. So I think that's one area we should think about. It's an attempt to garner support. But also, we're seeing this tape at a time when we've seen a renewed intensity of Al-Qaeda operations. We are, in fact, somewhere along the line, not sure where, of a relatively sustained Al-Qaeda campaign. And it may be that this, first of all, is designed to rally support and claim credit for what's happened, but also maybe to point the way to further attacks.
Now, the government have just on Friday, increased the terror alert status. Do you think that they're giving us enough information about what we should be on the lookout for, or would you like to see them be more specific about what they tell us?
I think the government's told us all they can tell us and all they should tell us about this particular threat increase, and it would be wrong for them to reveal more, because first of all, if they tell us too much, then it could help the enemy, it could help Al-Qaeda to know and understand what we know about them. Secondly, it could cause confusion, and it could expose sources who are sometimes positioned very dangerously who provide this intelligence. But I think they have provided enough in that area. I think it may be that they could give a bit more advice to the public about what to look for, and of course part of the reason for raising the threat level is to raise levels of vigilance, not just among the public but also police officers as well. And I think it wouldn't be a bad thing to maybe give a bit more guidance as to what to look for in the case of a heightened threat.
Colonel Richard Kemp, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Quentin Tarantino has scooped the top prize at the prestigious Screen Actors Guild Awards in Los Angeles. The Hollywood director picked up the award for outstanding performance by a cast for his World War II movie Inglourious. The awards are favoured in Hollywood because they're seen as a strong indicator of Oscar success, and there were plenty of prizes to go round, as Enda Brady reports.
It was a night of glamour and glitz for America's TV acting talent, and among the winners, Jeff Bridges taking Best Actor for his portrayal